This is your missed Zoom class for Thursday, March 25th. So remember, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we don't learn anything new. We review our Nearpods from yesterday, because before I continue teaching, I want to make sure that everyone understands the general concepts before we move on. So, first off, let me go over an overview of what today looks like and how Thursday normally works, right? So, yesterday, our homework was to complete Nearpod 4.1 and 4.2 that talked about biological ions and salts, right? So, if you haven't completed that yet, I would definitely do so by completing your homework either on the upcoming right hand side, or if this doesn't show up for you anymore, yesterday was Wednesday. So within the week one folder, March 24 Wednesday class, you want to open up this folder and click on the homework from yesterday, homework unit 4, the periodic table, Nearpod lesson 4.1 and 4.2, right? So mainly today, we kind of just review the common errors that I noticed in your Nearpod homework, either through your exit tickets or your Nearpods, right? So I look at your questions in the morning and see which ones most of the class got wrong, and those are the ones I go over. So before I go over those, if you got everything right in your Nearpod, you might not need me to go over anything. So, in which case, you want to complete your launch and your exit ticket for today. So, again, going onto your Schoology page, under today's date now, March 25th, Thursday class materials, if you scroll down and click on March 25 Zoom class links, it'll take you the link to the launch and the link to the launch retake. So when you complete the launch, if you open it up like so, right, feel free to have your Nearpod notes next to you, because all our quizzes and tests are open notes. So have your notes out next to you and complete this Google form. So when you're done completing this Google form, it's going to show up like this, where it says view score. So when you click on view score, let's say you did really poorly. You're going to see your points here. 1 out of 5 is what I scored. But that's okay, because if you had a misunderstanding, the question will show up in red. And if it shows up in red, underneath where it says feedback, it says click here for explanation. So in this link, and for every question you get wrong, there should be a link with a screenshot of the notes to help you out and to help you solve how to solve these questions, right? So once you look it over and add to your notes, feel free to go ahead and try the retake, right? So below the link to the launch is the link to the launch retake. And when you click that open, it's going to look something like this. So it's going to be very similar questions, but not exactly the same. The retake, I don't give you any feedback on, but you can take as many times as you needed in order to miss one. And if you are confused, feel free to email me. Normally, during Zoom class, I'll go over this in Zoom class, but since we're not in Zoom class, feel free to just email me and I can go over the questions with you. Afterwards, please make sure to update your medical chemistry unit 4, the periodic table progress tracker. So going back to my main page on Schoology, or my materials page is what they call it, you want to click and open up medical chemistry unit 4, the periodic table progress tracker. So following the directions here or through this video, when you click on View Documents, then Edit Documents, on the upper right-hand side, your progress tracker is going to look something like this. right? So our homework due today was Nearpod 4.1 and 4.2. At this point, you should have completed both of these, so you can check completed for both. If not, please go back to the earlier part of the video where I show you how to find these two Nearpod lesson homeworks, right? So at this point, that's an overview of everything. And I'm just going to go over the common errors. But again, if you don't need me to do that, feel free to start on your launch and your launch retake. So in Nearpod 4.1, and in our question of the day, I asked you, okay, if you're getting a cramp, what do you think you should do to prevent or stop that cramp from happening in the moment? So a lot of people said you could drink water or you can consume more salts, right? So here, if our cells are swollen, it's often a symptom of cramps. You might get nausea if you drink too much water, and swelling, right? And someone asked, can you still fix them by adding salt to your system? And that's exactly what you should do. Because when you sweat, if you think about your sweats, it's kind of like a hypertonic situation happening, right? This is what we went over in Nearpod 4.1. And when you're in a hypertonic solution or situation, right? Essentially, when you're playing sports and things like that, you're losing not only water, but you're also losing salts. So in chemistry, we call salts ions, right? And when you're drinking Gatorade, they don't want to tell you that you're actually just drinking cheap salt water, so they call it electrolytes. It sounds fancy and worth the price of paying like $2.50 for Gatorade, right? So because you're not only losing salts, but you're also losing water, right? Think about your sweats. When you're sweaty, it's kind of salty tasting, right? You also want to add back not only water, so to prevent a cramp, but you also want to drink water, is one of the things you want to do, but you also want to consume salt ions, salt or ions, right? And that's because you're also losing this, right? So you want to balance that out again or put it back in an isotonic state. So if you look at your labels on Gatorade and Powerade, it has all of the 5 ions that you need: potassium, chlorine, magnesium, sodium, and so on, right? So mainly we talked about this in Nearpod lesson 4.2. So when you're cramping, not only do you want to consume salts, but you also want to consume water. The fastest way to do this, from my experience, is to consume things that contain all 5 of these ions. So you can pay $2.50 for your Gatorade bottle, or if you don't care about flavor, soy sauce and mustard, like the mustard that you put on hot dogs, also contains all 5 of these ions. It's a little cheaper, probably more gross tasting though, right? So another thing that I noticed is in Nearpod lesson 4.1, when you're talking about our exit tickets, right? When we're sweating, we're again losing water and we're losing salts. So if you're losing water and you're losing salts, you're in a hypertonic state. So lose H2O, lose salts. So if you only consume water, you're going to end up from a hypertonic state into a hypotonic state, right? Because you're only drinking water, but you're losing salt and water. So not only do you need to drink water, but you also need to drink salt, like we said in the last slide. So therefore, In this case, if you only drink water to and you're not drinking back the salts or consuming back the salts, you're going to end up in a hypotonic state. Right. So I hope I clarified that lesson for you. If you do have any more questions still, feel free to email me.